Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. It's Ronsley. This is a live recording of Should I Start a Podcast? And if you want the edited versions of this show, go to shouldistartapodcast.com. You can find it on all your favorite podcast platforms, and it is primarily for business owners who have a podcast and want to get more new listeners, more revenue, more credibility. If that's you, you should check out the podcast because there's like so many tactics from some of the most famous people in podcasting who've used a podcast to grow their business. Today, I have a legend in the house he has created and sold 6 out of the 7 businesses, and he's running the 7th one. So he's got a lot of experience in business. He helps lots of people create amazing partnerships. He's got a really cool club called the Partnership Club, and we're going to get into that. But if you're a business owner and you have a podcast and you have a story on how a business and a podcast has hindered or helped your business, DM me because I'd love to know that story. I'd love to be able to feature you if possible on the show. And we're also going to get into a mistake number 58. It's a mistake that business owner podcasters make with their podcast. It's about producing episodes without a plan to best serve your audience. And this happens a lot because people kind of think about themselves and how good they're going to look with the podcast before they think about the audience and who they're going to serve and how the ROI is going to benefit their business. So we're going to get into that. I'm sure Michael Griffiths has a lot to say about that. And also, if you don't know, this year, 2022, we're going to do our 9th iteration of We Are Podcast. We Are Podcast is the first podcasting conference in Australia. It started in 2015. And it's primarily for business owners who have a podcast and want to grow it, or grow the business using the podcast. So make sure you check that out, wearepodcast.com. Early bird tickets go on sale next week, I think. So 27% off your ticket price. Make sure you get that. Today, we have Michael Griffiths in the house, who is, like I said at the start, a legend. He's done a lot of really cool things, but he's got this unique Limbic advantage model, which I want to get into. He has done some really, really cool things over the last 10 years and has been a basketball coach, which I want to talk about. Michael, how are you doing? Good to have you on the show.
Yeah, doing fantastic. Thank you. And I feel like I might have made all 58 of the previous mistakes, and I've definitely made mistake number 58 many a times with our own podcast.
Yeah, it's an easy one to make, primarily because, and I say 50. I mean, even I make the mistakes that are on this list. It's just that you can only deal with a certain bunch of them, and some of them you can just literally fix by knowing what the thing is. Just like right now, so a lot of us that get into podcasting as business owners, like yourself and like me, don't know how to be a really good podcaster. So there's these little tips and tricks that we can actually do that makes the big difference. Let's talk about your journey, right? If you go back and you think about your entrepreneurial career, what is the moment that stands out?
Yeah, and I think probably even going all the way back, and sometimes I just take this for granted, but I had someone, I don't know, probably 6-7 months ago go, most people actually don't do that. I go, oh, okay. So it probably started all the way back when I was 10, and I started coaching an under 10 representative basketball side down in Melbourne. And to me, it was just, I loved the game, and I was playing the game at a high level, and it was like, why not coach these kids? And it's like, thinking about back on it now, it's like, well, you're running a team. You're dealing with parents. You're dealing with the ups and downs of the kids. You're trying to get people court time. You're dealing with, in essence, it's really no different to what we do in business, is it?
Yeah.
Like, you've got the parents are your employees or your contractors or etc. Your players are your clients, and you've got to be able to manage it all and get the best possible result. In basketball, it's winning games. In business, it's just generally winning, full stop.
Yeah.
So when I look back at that, that's probably actually where it all starts from and where it's set up on in terms of, I hate losing. I hate losing at anything. And there's no possible way that I'm ever going to give up on something. if we're having a losing season, well, how do you turn it around? If
Yeah.
things aren't going great within this particular month of business, how do you turn it around? It's just like, yeah. So I actually think it probably starts all the way back there if I was to really think about it properly.
It's crazy because I just had a similar realization. It's extremely funny that you're saying all these things because I'm kind of going, holy shit, that just happened to me a year ago. My wife Rochelle was like, hey, let's get fit again, or like I want to get fit again because I've been doing 75 hard for like a couple of years, but she wanted to get fit again. She's like, I really like badminton, let's go play badminton. And I'm like, you know what? I used to play like badminton, like I went for a national camp and stuff. And she's like, oh yeah, that sounds great. I don't think she like it really. She understood what was going on. Anyway, I went to play badminton, and now I'm playing competitively. I'm playing, and the thing is, I'm again, I suppose, for my age bracket, which is so weird. But the thing that I realized as soon as I stepped on the court, like the first time that I went with my wife, I stepped on the court. I was like, and started to play, and I realized of why I had certain attitudes in life. And I was like, why? I looked at Rochelle and was like, why are you messing around? Like, just can you play prop? She's like, it's a social. I'm like, no, it's a badminton court. Like you don't like, disrespect the court. So then a lot of things, and I was like, oh, where did that come from? It was just spontaneous, right? And then I kind of realized a lot of things in life. And I think the best thing that I realized was that I grew up an athlete. And I think that's probably something that you're talking about right now, is that this athlete mentality is what, if you take into business, has got this massive knock-on effect in how you do business. Is that correct in saying?
100%, 100%. And like our little one now, Soph, who's 9, and like she loves her sport. She's nippers, surf lifesaving. She's surfing all the time. She plays soccer twice in a boys' team as the girl, as well as a girls' team.
So good.
She plays basketball in a mixed team as well as the girls' team, and she has exactly the same traits. Can't just I'm not losing today, and but I look at it and I just have a wry little smile underneath, and it's not about being pushy and going. It's like, you do what you want to do, and I'm here to support you. I'm here to take you to where you need to go to, and you make the decision if you want to play that or not. But I look at some of those qualities and some of those traits, and I just go, deep down inside, I'm jumping up and down cheering.
How good. And you know what's really interesting, like, is my first business obviously was a restaurant, $500,000 of debt. We all know the story. We're not going to get into that. But Rochelle has said to me a lot of times over the last, I don't know, 11, 12 years, she's like, I'm so glad they shut the restaurant for you, because otherwise you'd still be there trying to make it work. And again, I did not realize where I got that from. And then a few months ago, I was like, actually, we were on the plane, and I was like, remember you keep telling me about this fact that I would still be there trying to make this restaurant work? I was taught not to give up. I was trained not to give up. And it suddenly made the click. I made the connection between being an athlete, while there's all these good traits, right? The athlete does not know when it's time to give up. And sometimes in business, maybe it's time to like start afresh. Have you ever seen that? Like, did you ever go through that? What is that kind of journey like?
Yeah. In the previous businesses, not so much, because things grew very quickly and someone else came along and said, can I buy that? And I just said, yeah, I'm not invested in that. Off you go. Yeah. But certainly within this, this is what, now nearly 9 years, and it's evolved out of sight. It's refreshed out of sight. And I can still see it's got more in it where it's going to get to that I don't even quite know what it is. But I think you have to be like that. Your business has to be like that. And even with what we're about here in terms of your podcast, it has to be like that. I think about our podcast 4.5 years ago when it started versus what it is today, completely different beast, because our thinking's different, the purpose of it's different, the end outcome we want is different. and therefore you've got to just keep moving with the times, as they say, and keep refreshing it. I think if you keep doing the same thing all the time, you're destined eventually just to be the old dinosaur that's not needed.
Yeah, let's get into that because you touched on the podcast, and maybe we focus on that for a second. Like with your journey as the podcaster, like first of all, let's start with where it is now. Like what's happening with the podcast now? I know there's over 300 episodes that you've done. Let's talk about your podcast now, and then let's go back to when it started and how maybe it's evolved.
Yeah. So right now, podcasting for me is about we get to hopefully change someone's thinking just slightly, which then might make them or allow them to have a better business. And if they have a better business, then hopefully they get to help more people and they get to contribute to society and they get to maybe employ people or they get to support a charity that they love and they get to. And so the bigger picture to me is what comes out of my mouth and what I get to share and what I get to be able to impart to others hopefully makes this small little impact and this ripple effect to people who I probably will never meet. But to know that then they can go on, and we talk about this all the time within our podcast, that, hey, make sure that you make an impact. Make sure that you help others. Make sure that you contribute to society. And I'm really passionate now to don't just have a podcast for the sake of having a podcast, Michael. Like, what you're going to share is going to be stuff that if someone was sitting with you, you would tell them that stuff for them to go and do and hopefully change that paradigm of thinking or create that little ripple effect. And so that's a big change to what it was at the very beginning, which was more so talk to put out content for the sake of putting out content, because hopefully then someone will go, oh, that's really good. Maybe I need to become your client. Where to me now, our podcast isn't about I need a podcast to get clients. That can be a byproduct just for the sake of being a byproduct. Our podcast now is, hey, you've got a platform and you've got a voice and you've got the ability to really change or help shape people's paradigm and their thinking.
That's a big shift, and I think it's really remarkable that you kind of like noticed the shift. Do you remember when it happened, or was there an instance or something that happened or like that made you make the shift? Did you do a certain number of episodes and kind of had some reps under your belt? Like, what was the story like for you to might kind of go, that's a big kind of going, oh, this is a content machine, to now my voice is so important. I realize how much value it has, and maybe Sophie will learn to kind of use her voice in the best way. I don't know. So what was that a shift? Like, what happened?
Yeah, it has to be a shift within you, and that's exactly what it was within me. It had nothing to do with business. It was after, like, last year, as you sort of know, we did a year of 75 hard and 3 phases, and through that, your own personal growth, your own self-belief, your own confidence, your own swagger, as I call it, air of good arrogance. It's not being arrogant. It's a gear. That's what swagger is to me.
Mm-hmm.
You go, you know what? It's actually more than this, and it's not for everybody. And the people who love it will love it, and the people who don't love it, that's okay. They can go somewhere else. And it's the internal chatter when you're in your own head that you have to be okay with and you have to thrive on. That was when it changed. So it hasn't all been all that long. Like, it's probably maybe 9 months ago when that really got to a point where I just went, this could just be so much more. Stop holding back. Yeah.
And you know what? I have to say, the shift is fucking noticeable. It's a big shift. It is noticeable. In your attitude, in your energy, in your frequency, I suppose, as well. So it's really fascinating. And you're right. I mean, it's fascinating to rediscover the athlete gene. It is just has been an absolute insanity, because also you spoke about 75 hard, right? And there's a lot of chatter that comes with 75 hard. And to get through it, you've got to really not necessarily quieten the chatter, but relax into the chatter and learn to understand where the chatter is coming from. And I feel as a result, it kind of does these changes to who you are as a person and who you kind of land up meeting as well along the way. And I mean, that can be definitely taken into business and life. And I think you see business as well as like that kind of a direct reflection of how your life is going and who you are as a person.
1,000,000%. And the people who want to go, business is over here and life's over here, nah, sorry. Whatever happens in your personal life is going to come into your business, whether you like it or not, because we're emotional human beings. Whatever happens in business is going to come into your personal life because we're emotional human beings. And our system and our internals, they don't know whether it's business or personal.
Yeah.
They just know that it's an emotion, and therefore it's going to always come to both. So I'm probably bigger now than ever before on going, be just a winner in your personal. It will transfer over to your business whether you like it or not. And I think the mistake people make is they try to go, well, let me win in business. Nah, it has to start with personal.
Yeah.
Like, to me, you can win in business, but if you're personal, just you're not winning and you're not having the obsession and you're not striving and you're not just getting after it, it doesn't matter if you're winning in business. Eventually, you won't, because the two just go hand in hand.
Yeah, huge. Let's talk about the podcast. So now you've got over 300 episodes. What is the process like right now? So how do you go about getting people on? What's the process like to record? What's the process like to publish? Like, how does that go? And maybe I'll ask that next question later, but maybe we'll start with that. Like, what happens right now for your podcast to get published?
Yeah, so you're going to cringe and probably palm your forehead and go, no, it is just so simple, and I keep it really simple so that way then it's fun for me to do, because if I have to get it too difficult and I have to get it too techie, then it becomes a chore and I just won't do it. Yeah. So our podcast is weekly. Sometimes we bring guests on. I'd probably say maybe we have one, maximum 2 guests a month, and the rest of the time it's me. So at least 2 out of 4 or 3 out of 4, it's me having conversations, it's me sharing, it's me again changing paradigms. But then I come across amazing people, and I just go, hey, this would be great for our wider networks and wider audience to be able to get some education around that, or to get some insights or some knowledge around that. So when that happens, we invite them on. So the show goes out every Monday morning on a weekly basis. In terms of recording, I use StreamYard, and that way I can do it as a video also. And when we download it, it goes as both a video file as well as an audio file. And then we use Podbean as our podcast hosting platform. So we put the audio up onto Podbean, which then puts it at your Apple, your Google, your Spotify, and all those little minion ones. Yeah. And we put the video up onto YouTube, and then throughout the course of the week or the following week, then the video is also shared out across our social platforms, and the audio is shared out to our CRM and things like that. So that really is as simple as what our podcast is.
I love that you said the things that you said, because I think people complicate things, especially the simple kind of people complicate, make it too complicated, and they never start as a result of it being too complicated. So the fact that you already got it going is obviously amazing, because you're smart enough to kind of go, okay, if I do it this complicated, I'm never going to get it done. So let me just make sure that I can get it done, because getting it done is way better, and having some reps on the board is like way better than not getting anything done. So I want to ask this question, right? Because I find this fascinating that you're doing 3 out of 4, sometimes or 2 out of 4, 3 out of 4, where you're sharing. what is your process like for you to get, firstly, what is the pre-process, like getting to a point where you switch on the camera and start delivering live? Obviously, you're doing that StreamYard, which is obviously live, so it's going to your group, is it?
No, we just record it
Got it.
because generally it goes up 1 or 2 weeks later.
Right.
And then that way, then I don't have to be same time on a Monday. Sometimes I just don't feel like we're in the space. We're quite in the creativity,
Yeah.
so I might then record it on a different day.
Great.
I'm not under that pressure because we've already got an episode, at least one episode that can go out on that Monday. So then I can record it whenever I feel that zone of creativity hitting me. So we just record, we don't go live, but then we put the video up into our socials
Yeah.
and YouTube, and
Yeah.
then we use the audio out there
Yeah.
on the
Cool.
podcast platform.
Amazing. So let's talk about your process before you hit record, and then while you hit record, like what are you thinking about, like what's your headspace, like what's going through your brain, and then also you can touch on like what happens after you've switched it off, like what's that whole Michael Griffiths, this is my sharing zone process like.
Yeah. Okay. So before, look, honestly, I reckon I could speak for 24 hours a day, every single day of the week, probably for the next 10 years. Like I feel like I've got just so much happening in my head, and I'm always listening to and watching other things. So I'm always watching YouTube videos. I'm always listening to other podcasts. And I'll take as an example. So I was listening to a podcast the other day where someone was sort of being hot seated around how they use ambassadors. And I was listening to it and I mean, yeah, that makes perfect sense. And then I go, okay, how would I do that? How would I change that? How would I do that from a limbic brain point of view, where it's about creating emotion, it's about creating brain chemicals, it's about and and I was listening to them talking, and it was just so logical and process driven. Like there's probably a week's worth of stuff I could talk about just there. So I'm always, in essence, got so many different. I've got on my phone just ideas, notes, ideas. I'm not even close to probably even cutting that in half with the amount of just different things on there. So that's the before part. I'm always looking at adding more ideas onto that from my environment and what I'm listening to and what I'm watching. Sitting sort of in front of me, when you guys can't see, but it's sort of just up there on a big board, is like, oh, it's probably close to about 20 pages, just A4 pages with models drawn on it, with language on it. And so anytime I really want to be able to talk about something, I just look and I go, oh, okay, like how do we get more heartfelt in terms of the powerful story framework that we have? And now there's probably 1,000 things that I could talk about just within that one little section, let alone the 9 different accelerators within the things that we're about. So I think the first part in terms of before is give yourself the stimuli to be able to keep coming up with ideas. The other thing in terms of it being me versus a lot of others, I'm really particular. Like I really want people on our podcast where I just go, that was amazing. And if I've got people where I just go, oh yeah, well, I don't want that for our people. I want our people to be able to go, you know what, when Michael brings a guest on, it's generally that guest is just going to blow me away. So therefore I want to be able to listen. That's sort of my mentality around that also. So the before part really is just being in different environments, listening to different things, putting ideas constantly down in my notes. Generally, something will have happened over sort of the 24 hours beforehand where I go, yeah, that's what I want to get on my soapbox about. So that's sort of the before part. Then just before I hit record, the way we start is fairly similar. Always sort of start with, hey, Michael Griffiths here, founder of Referral Marketing Guru. Welcome to this week's Get More Referrals Today podcast. As always, our podcast is here for blah, 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 blah. We don't run ads. We don't run sponsors. If you love the podcast, make sure you share it with just one other person, because who knows what impact you could make by helping somebody else. So that is pretty much entrenched. So the
Yeah.
starting part is
Yeah.
really easy, because I'm saying pretty much the same thing that takes 60 to 90 seconds
Yeah.
every single week.
Yeah.
So I don't need to sort of sit there and think about, oh, how do I start this? Or what do I say first? Or what
Yep.
do I, because that first part fires me up.
Yep.
And the tonality and the passion just comes from that very first part of what I say. That then it just flows.
Yeah.
Certainly, I have an outline, but I'm certainly not at all scripted. There are times where I'll be going down a path and something will pop into my head, and I'll go on a rant for 3-4 minutes about it. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the how I am before, and then how I am just at that moment of hitting record.
Yeah.
I don't have a set notion in my head that it has to be 10 minutes, it has to be 15, it has to be 30, it has to be 45. It has to be as long as it needs to be to get the impact and change the paradigm that I was looking to do. So I tend to find that most tend to be somewhere between sort of 14 and 20. Guests tend to be around 30. But it's definitely not done on purpose, where I'm sitting there looking at the timer going, okay, how do I get to
Yep.
X time? If something purely was a 3 minute, so be it. I probably wouldn't be able to talk just for 3 minutes, but the mentality is that doesn't matter. So I'm not hung up on some of the things that I know people get caught up on, oh, how do I speak for 20 minutes every single week? Or how do I do something for 30 minutes every single week?
Yeah.
But I just think it's got to be impactful, and however long that takes, it takes.
Yeah.
And then the after, it's sort of like the hour after I finish recording an episode. It's like, just bring it on. Like I am so pumped, and the juices are flowing, and it's just like, let's go. Like, what else are we gonna? What else can we dominate right now? So that's sort of the three different stages that are taking place.
That's so cool, because I mean it's that everyone's different, obviously, and you are so in tune with like what fires you up and like what's working for you, so you can almost like schedule your calendar in a way that you do one of those and then kind of do your most critical task later, because it'll be so well done. I really want to highlight a couple of things that you've done. First of all, I love the way you look at a scenario, and the first question you're asking yourself is like, how would I do that? Like, how would I do that different? Maybe how would I do that in reference to my framework? And that's what you have that sort of program running, which means you're kind of like you're getting the input in the right way that you want the input to come in, which is like super important, right? And then you're processing it really well, because you're kind of going, well, I'm leaving it open to art where the expression comes through me, but I have a kind of like an outline that really helps. But what I also love, and I think all the listeners here could kind of like take something from this, is how you use your space, right? The space in front of you is being used because we're looking at this space, and right now I'm looking at blank walls, by the way. I'm not like as like prepared as you are, but when you said that, I went, that totally makes sense. Like, no one sees this space, right? And it can be used for so many cues that could help you reinforce your message, which is your message, but it's just about you staying on brand. And I think is that how that happens?
Yeah. So I've just got sort of like these big canvases that I just, so I don't have to stick things against walls, and they just sort of sit there in front of me. So there's about 9 sheets per canvas, 2 canvases, so 18 odd sheets. And there's like triangles, there's Venn diagrams, there's the brain, with cortex limbics. There's little flow charts. Like there's so many different things up there, and I can just look at it, and you're right. It keeps me on point to the message and what we know is most powerful to be able to help change the paradigm and change the thinking to then get the results that we know people can get when they have that sort of framework or they have that sort of thinking. So and I think the most important thing is whether we know it or not, subconsciously, it's what I look at for so many hours within a day that you're evolving your own thinking. And there's so many times where I'll look at a word and I'll go, you know what? There's actually a better word for that. Or, you know what? It's actually this. And I'll go and I'll redo the diagram. And now the new diagram's up there. So I think it's a great way for you to keep focusing also on your own frameworks and your own things to continue evolving your own genius.
Yeah. Wow, huge. So let's talk about the limbic advantage model, right? So you talk about these a lot, and I think this is a recent evolution as well. Like this whole idea of bringing neuroscience and brain chemicals into this is like, I'm curious, like for someone who's never heard of that in reference to business, how would you sort of explain that to someone like they're a 6-year-old?
Yeah. So and 100%, it's new and it's evolving. I love it. So much fun. So I suppose up until like 2018, 2019, like we've always been great at how to referral systems and how to use your networks and how to leverage through partnerships to be able to grow your business. And everything I would say, people would come back and they'd go, that was amazing. Like it just worked. And I'd go, yeah, of course it did. But I never really knew why it just worked. And then one day I found I can't remember what I was searching on YouTube, but up came this video around attraction, what attracts females. And then there's another video underneath it, what attracts males. And I sort of watched them both and I just went, wow, our brains are so different. And then that led to another thing, and probably now close to 4,000 videos later down the rabbit holes. It's really become so interesting in terms of there are two key areas of our brain. The cortex brain, which is logical, it's analytical. Every word I'm saying, your cortex brain is understanding. And then there's the limbic brain, which doesn't understand a single word. It's only feeling based. And you've probably had where people have said to you before, like, this was the best decision I've ever made. I don't know why, but it just was. Or working with you was just amazing. I can't put my finger on what it actually is. And the thing is, they're 100% correct. They can't. Because the limbic brain doesn't understand words, but it controls all human behavior and all decision making. But it's only feeling based. So once we started going down that path and understanding that, we started to go, why are videos so big and so powerful? It's because people can see you. People can see your passion. People can hear the tonality. People can be on the journey with you where they can't do that through text. See? So now every little aspect of business, I can tell you exactly why something works or doesn't work or how to improve it by just simply, as we say, limbicking the crap out of it and making it more feeling based so that you can actually, and this is the scary part, that we can actually strategically influence every other emotional human being. Like, that's scary, but we can. And it's not about NLP language and it's not about douchebag sales scripts. And like, people talk about right brain, left brain. Yeah, left brain is logical, cortex, right brain's limbic. People talk about red brain, green brain. Red brain is logical, green brain is limbic. So we're actually just now calling it for what it is. And now, as I said, I can take just about any process, system, thing that someone's doing in their business and can absolutely transform it simply because we limbic brain it. And the thing for most people is, and this isn't their fault or anything to do with them, is we've all been given a survival brain. That's what we were given because it was about Don't get eaten by the saber-toothed tigers. Make sure you knew how to find food, and make sure you were having a roof over your head. Well,
Yeah.
we've evolved since caveman days, but
Mm.
our brain hasn't. And we've all given a survival brain. And the survival brain, unfortunately, is cortex. It's logical, it's analytical, it's rational, because it helps you survive. So, as businesses, we're in that cortex brain, whether we like it or not, probably 95% plus of our day. So, of course, most people then can't get over into the limbic when they need to find referrals, when they need to deepen their connection with their message, when they need to chemicalize their communication, when they need to nurture and turn people from prospects into clients, when they onboard people. Like, there's so many little elements where people have a great process, but the bottom line is it's cortex brain, it's logical, and it flat out is boring.
Um, that's really impressive how that has changed, because the partnership, it is actually one of the things. Here's what's really fascinating. I love what you're saying for a variety of different reasons. The main reason is I believe that business owners in general miss the most important conversation, which is the business development conversation. Kind of like going about doing business probably the wrong way, in the sense that the thing that is actually the most important critical task for the business owner to be doing, that no one else can necessarily do in the right way, is being neglected for the other, what looks like important tasks or urgent tasks, which are neither. And what you're saying is it's because we are wired in a certain way and we want everyone to like us. And as a result, we're kind of going, well, let's ignore that almost and look at other things and be busy and say, I'm really busy and really tired and I can't make this business work, and not doing the most important thing, which the brain is not allowing us to do because it is a limbic brain. Is that fair? Or
Yeah, because our brain is, how do we survive? That's generally the first question, and it's the purpose of why you were given a brain, to ensure that you survived. So as a business, if you look and you go, oh, don't have many clients right now, or you look and you go, oh, cash flow is terrible, or you look and you go, whatever negative, your brain instantly kicks into survive, 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 survive. What do I need to do? So then we go, oh, let me just pick up the phone and call people and ask if they want to be clients. Or let me go to networking events and hand out my business cards to 100 people, hoping that I get one or two people saying yes. Or let me reach out to our CRM and spam them when it's just simple survival mode. And again, that's how our brain's created. So I'll say it's not someone's fault, but at the same time, simply, it doesn't work. And it doesn't work because it doesn't evoke a positive brain chemical in the other person that makes them go, yes, I want to be around you.
yeah, yeah. I'm picking up everything you're putting down, by the way. It's lovely. I love the evolution. I love how this is sort of gone. I I also really like how you have picked up on the mistakes that we're making when we're in limbic mode, like when we're in survival mode. Like the three things, that three scenarios that you said just now is like literally what people do, and you can read them and go, this person's desperate almost, right? And it's like, so how, I want to ask you this question before I go into the mistake, but this, and then come back to you. But right now the question is like, how should we be looking at this? How, I mean, now that you've come across this in as a business owner, as someone creating something, how do we need to rewire or have a different perspective on how we're doing business?
Yeah. So I say to our guys, our partnership club guys, and the people around us, is like, you've got three things to ask yourself, and I talk about our centerpiece is all around activating extraordinary moments throughout your business. So don't see your business as a whole business. See your business as millions of little moments. Like right now, I'm with you. There's a moment. I'll jump off here, and we've got some group training. There's a moment. Then I need to reach out to the people from our collaboration party the other day. There's a moment. Then I've got a few emails that I've got to be able to respond. Every one of those emails is an individual moment. And if you see your business as moments, you can then go, how can I be more heartfelt in that moment? How can I be more magical in the experience that they're going to receive from that moment? And how am I evoking brain chemicals in that moment? And they're the three things that we've got to come back to be able to ask ourselves. And straight away, we could probably see, yeah, if I received that from someone, it probably wouldn't create too many brain chemicals in me. So I feel like it's conscious awareness until it becomes just a state of just, I do it out of habit. So that's me. I do it out of habit because I've done it non-stop now for 2.5 years across personal world and business world, that it pretty much is a habit, and I can see what's magical and what's not magical, or what the next level of magical is, or what the next level of heartfelt is, or what the next level of brain chemical is, compared to most people, because people usually just try to do something once and then it's like, okay, done, versus being constantly in that evolvement.
Yeah, yeah. So good, so good, amazing. So I'm just going to talk about this mistake for a second, and I'll come back to you. And what I'd love for you to do is like maybe comment on the mistake, and then I definitely want to finish this with like any tips and tricks and ideas you have for like new podcasters or or maybe new podcast people who have maybe had a podcast for a while and kind of looking at being new business owners as well. So if you can have a perspective on either one of those, that would be fantastic. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the mistake this recording is producing episodes without a plan. Or without a plan to serve your audience, and I think without a plan to even get a return for your business. Now, usually when people think about return or ROI, return on an investment, they only think about one return. They think about return on investment. But here's the thing. I believe that a podcast can give you return not only on investment, it'll give you return on scalability, because once you do it, you know, you can have access to it forever. Return on time, which means you do it in the time, and anytime someone asks you something similar, you're saving your time by not repeating it, and you return on time. Return on time, return on scalability, return on reps. The amount of reps that you get makes you a better communicator, gives you more ideas on how you can better serve this audience. And I think that what really happens is that when we think about creating or producing episodes, we kind of only go in going, how do I look good? And as a result, we don't go in with a plan to serve our audience. We kind of go in with a plan on us looking great. And a really good friend of mine, Philip McKernan, he says this thing about us all wanting to make an impact, but all wanting to look good while we're making this impact. So as a result, we don't even start. And if that's where you're at, I just want to say that it's normal. And I kind of want to also say that if you're in that mode, just kind of shifting the perspective by listening to this episode, because it was so relevant, kind of fits in really well. If you want a list of all these mistakes and the top 10 mistakes that business owners make with their podcast, and how to fix them and how to avoid them, go to mistakes.wearepodcast.com. We've made a list, and literally just like you can fix them by reading some of them. For example, making sure that you're recording not in audio only, but also in video. Even if you produce just an audio type show, primarily because you can see the other person. The visual aspect is so important when you're recording. You might never release the video. I'm not going to get into that mistake right now, but if you want those lists, go to mistakes.wearepodcast.com and check that out. Mike, did anything what I said land with you, or did you kind of think of something differently and kind of go, I wonder whether Ronsley has thought of that when it came to that mistake?
It probably all landed at some stage. When I think back to the earlier days, even 2 years in, I was probably going, why am I doing this? What am I doing? What's the purpose of it all? And just sometimes getting on for the sake of getting on without really even thinking about anything. We didn't use video to begin with. We just simply had a podcast for the podcast. And it's like, hold on. You put things on Facebook, you put things on Instagram, you put things on LinkedIn, you got a YouTube channel with 2 videos on it. Why? You could be putting stuff up there all the time. So yeah, all very relevant.
Yeah, cool. All right, let's wind up with this. What tips, tricks, and ideas do you have for like someone that's just starting out or is kind of looking to improve their podcast and their business?
Yeah. So there's a couple. First one is don't get caught up in the logistics or the how-to. There's enough people out there in the world that can tell you that. Even just Googling things, you'll have plenty of videos, you'll have plenty of tutorials. Obviously, turning up to We Are Podcast is another great place where you've got to have a whole community of people who have a podcast that can share knowledge and insights to you. So don't get caught up with the logistics and don't get caught up with the tech. Second thing is consistency. You just got to be consistent. You're going to have times where you're doing it and you're thinking, is it even really making an impact? Like, do people even care or listen? And the thing is, they do. And you reach this, and I say it all the time, it's like the train's at the station. And so the train stopped. So when you start pushing the train, it takes a lot of work. Yeah. But eventually the train starts moving. And then it starts moving faster and faster and faster. And it's easier to push. And eventually you can't run around the other side to stop the train. And I think you got to keep that analogy in your head about just keep showing up, because every time you show up, you're pushing the train. Every time you release an episode, you're pushing the train. Every time you put something out there, the train's getting faster and faster. So make sure you keep pushing the train. Okay? And then I think the last one is, in terms of you just getting a little bit more profound, is think about what you actually really want to change. Or what you really want to do for the end listener. Podcast isn't about content. Podcast is more impactful than that. And Ron, you shared something with me last week, or I think it was, where you talked about, really, when you've got a podcast, it's like you're a journalist. Mm-hmm. Like you're part of the media. You've got a voice. You've got the ability to be able to go and interview people and go to different events and bring that back to your own audience. And I think when you start seeing it like that, then all of a sudden you're not just putting out a business podcast. You're not just doing a podcast hoping you get more business. You actually got a bigger responsibility than that. Yeah. And now that's getting much deeper, and there's a bunch of people where you might not be ready for that message, and that's okay. Yeah. You'll remember that message down the track. But I think if you are ready for the message, then start thinking about, okay, I've actually got a real voice here. I've got a platform here. I've got the ability to be able to change other people's thinking. What impact do I really want to make for the betterment of society?
Yeah. Wow. Amazing. This has been absolutely fantastic. I totally love the evolution of Partnership Club. It looks amazing. You're amazing. Where can people find you if they're looking to kind of consume your work and find out more about what you do?
Yeah, the easy place is just michaelgriffiths.com.au. You can follow us from there on socials. You can find the YouTube channel. There's various guides. There's various videos. So just michaelgriffiths.com.au.
Amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, you can find an edited version of this episode and all the other live ones that I do at Should I Start a Podcast or any of your podcast platforms where you get that. I have an upcoming training coming on, which is how to get on 100 podcasts in 100 days and the 10 steps that will get you there with less than 20 minutes a day, which is when you think about being on 100 other platforms, what that might do for you and your brand. Check that out in the comments, or if you're in the group, We Are Podcast group, go check that out. Go check out Michael's stuff, and definitely check out We Are Podcast. And I want to see you all, if you have a business and a podcast, at We Are Podcast in Brisbane, 10th and 11th of November. I'm sure Michael's going to be there because it's going to be really cool. And I'm excited to introduce you to a whole bunch of other podcasters who are doing amazing work with their podcast and for their audience. So good to have you, Michael. Thank you so much for doing this and giving us your time and expertise. I'll catch you all on the next episode.